All watchers, welcome back to another installment of your favorite St. Louis City SC podcast with Jake and Justin at the helm here. We are live with a preview of our upcoming match at City Park against none other than the number one team currently in the MLS, which is FC Cincinnati. So looking forward to a mouth-watering matchup on Saturday. But before we get into all of the fun topics and break down FC Cincinnati, do a little scouting, Justin, we have a fun five-a-side today that I picked the topic for. This shows you how mature I think, and definitely a topic that I think we can all relate to, though, and that is cereals. So we're going to do a five-a-side and draft our favorite cereals. And Justin, I'm going to kick it to you to start.
You said how mature you are. I think that'll be dependent on your choices. I know for a fact mine are extremely immature.
Same. Yeah.
And thank you for letting me pick first, because there is one cereal that is absolutely above the rest, and it's Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And I'm grabbing that with the first overall pick. Not gonna lie, I'm gonna preface all of these with I eat my cereal dry for the majority of the time, which is probably might be a serial killer move, but Cinnamon Toast Crunch, you kind of have to eat it dry. Otherwise, you lose like the sugar and cinnamon stuff.
Serial killer move. Absolutely. And no pun intended there.
Nice.
Shout out to Cinnamon Toast Crunch. My wife loves it when I call it CT Crunch. I don't know if anyone else calls it that, but Sugar Cookie Edition, also pretty fire of Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Not my draft pick, but if you haven't tried it, comes out around Christmas usually. My first pick in the cereal draft is Reese's Puffs. I think Reese's Puffs, perfect combination of chocolate and peanut butter. I'm a big sweets guy. It just kicks. It absolutely kicks every time you have it. So Reese's Puffs.
I like Reese's Pieces. I don't eat the Puffs very much. So next, I'm going Frosted Flakes because they're great, and that's all I got.
That's fair. That's a classic. That's definitely a classic.
Thank you.
You're going to catch a drift with mine. I'm going to go to Captain Crunch. And I'm a big peanut butter guy. That good structure to the Cap'n Crunch. It has a nice crunch to it. The milk mixes in. I'm a normal cereal person. I don't hate on dry people, but I like to do the milk as well. And the milk and the peanut butter, it absolutely slaps.
I don't hate on dry people. It was a weird sentence. I'm going into number 3. It's kind of an old one, a staple. Fruity Pebbles with the Flintstones. It's a little weird one to also eat dry. And I'll also say this, Jake, when I eat it dry, you can't eat dry cereal with a spoon. Small. Yeah. So you eat dry cereal with your hands. So that one is kind of like a weird eat, but I still love it.
That's a scoop and funnel type cereal. That's one you got to have some sort of mechanism.
Yeah. I do not eat my dry cereal with a spoon. That would be absurd.
Fair. I'm going to Lucky Charms in the third spot. I think a little bit of a value pick for me here. I think Lucky Charms are slept on. You got the whole debate with the marshmallow versus the actual whatever you charm piece of that in the Lucky Charms, but I think a good ratio is hitting the sweet spot for me.
Yeah, I had them in the 6th spot in case you took any of my top 5. So I'm going with one of my favorites too. That's also a good pick from here is Fruit Loops. Ooh. And also, just to let you know, Jake, they did come out with a Fruit Loops with marshmallows. So if you're really trying to step the game up, I might put that in my picture and let people go crazy with that. But I love Fruit Loops with Toucan saying.
Okay. I am going to go to the cereal of life for my 4th pick. I think Life's a pretty classic cereal. It's got just enough sweetness to it to where it's not one of the bland or boring cereals that I feel like none of us are going to mention on this draft. But it has just enough. And I think the perfect mix of not soggy but not dry either in the Life is clutch, because if you let it sit for too long, it gets really soggy. That's the one drawback there.
Dude, I'm not picking any of that stuff. I know people are gonna be like, "Oh, why didn't you pick Cheerios?" I'm like, "No, I'm locking in a strong one here and a very good childhood one, Cookie Crisp." I love that stuff when it's dry, dude, and that's fine. I know you're gonna wave your hands, do whatever. I love Cookie Crisp.
That's a good dry cereal. That one makes sense. I'm gonna finish off with a flavor blast here, and I'm going to my buddy Apple Jacks. Apple Jacks goated commercials. That whatever that mascot was, what a quirky guy. But Apple Jacks just kick. Absolutely. The apple, the cinnamon, it's phenomenal. It's a great cereal.
It was tough for me not to put them in. I almost took them over Fruit Loops. I love Apple Jacks. I'm literally looking at it. I had them next. I have a picture of them, the little apple and the little cinnamon guy. But yeah.
All right,
All right,
Justin.
let's recap it. I'm going to go first.
Up.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch, Frosted Flakes, Fruity Pebbles, Fruit Loops, and Cookie Crisp.
I had Reese's Puffs, Captain Crunch, Lucky Charms, Life, and Apple Jacks. Shout out to Cocoa Puffs. I was not going to double down on the Puffs, and I like Reese's more than Cocoa Puffs. And like Reese's Puffs are kind of half of Cocoa Puffs. So that's
as we round this one out, Jake, I will say I haven't counted yet. I meant to count before this. You won the first ever 5-a-side, and you have yet to win 1 cent. Just FYI.
Okay, that's great. That's great. You want to hang your head on that.
I will.
I know you are.
That's gonna be another dub too.
We're getting some good ones in the comments here. Shredded wheat, corn checks, Cocoa Puffs, Honey Nut Cheerios, Wheaties. Joseph loving the healthier ones. Definitely good on you. Probably gonna show. Not good for us. Golden Grams slept on for sure. I like a good Golden Graham.
Dude, I had we got plenty that can be coming through. But tricks. I love
tricks. Interesting one.
Kids still like them. All right, let's move on.
Let's move into. Let's just put Seattle to bed, man. We've actually spent a lot of time talking about this. I feel like this week just on random forums, but honestly, that this was the first bad game of the season for us. When I said game, I mean more of like the second half. We were kept off the score sheet again for a second week straight after having one of the most high-powered offenses going into match day 6. So, Seattle's a team that's only conceded 3 goals in 2023, and they have 4 straight clean sheets. So, it's a little bit of a tough situation to go play against a team that is so hot defensively right now. And they put us to work, man. They put us to work in that second half. So I bet that my money is on them to be a top 3, top 5 team this season. They should be a title contender. And for us to play like we did in the first half against them, that should be optimistic for us. Like, we can stick with them. It's just about sticking with them for a full game versus just an hour.
Yeah, I just can't get myself to get behind Jordan Morris, like leading a team anywhere. So I don't know. I think they're going to be good. Yes, we are going to go through this game pretty quick. Our XG was 0.67. Theirs was 1.27. We talked about that. Half of our XG on that alone was Klaus's right footer off the post earlier in the game. We already talked about that. Good first half by the boys, kind of fell asleep in the second half and had some blunders, I would say, on some marking and the ball through Roman Berge's hands. And they had an absolute dart of a shot from outside the 18. So nothing much we could do there.
Justin,
second week in a row.
That goal was goal of the week, goal of match day 7. Yeah.
I think Roman, he had a first jump. I think he could have saved it. And I'm not saying he should have, but I would have. I'm not putting it past Roman, no pun intended, that he could have saved that.
So many puns. We're
this is too early. Minutes into this. I can't be doing this. It's been a long day. Last thing I'll say about it, we did not have any players on team of the match day for the 7th week, second week in a row that we have not had that. And that makes sense. We got shut out both games. So
yeah, certainly. So what happens in the rankings? Who really cares too much about power rankings unless they're looking great for us? But we moved from 4th to 7th in the MLS power rankings and 4th to 5th in the ESPN MLS power rankings. So not drastic. I'm happy with those positions still. But let's move on, Justin, to final kind of like other news before we get into Cincinnati. But City Park played host to the U.S. women's national team, who won 1-0 over Ireland in what I would call like a World Cup tune-up game before they head into that this summer. Becky Sauerbrunn, STL native, had her 200th competitive appearance or cap in front of the home crowd. So got to be happy for her. She almost scored her first international goal. It hit the crossbar on a design play for a set piece. You got to think that the coaches and the players were probably just really hoping that she could get that in front of the home crowd. But we were not at the game, but it looked fantastic. The buzz, the atmosphere looked amazing, which is nothing short of expectation.
Yeah, the one thing I will say on those games, Jake, I wish you could see, like when they were doing Becky's thing for the game, that it wasn't extremely packed yet. And that's not to our fans. It's 6:30 on a Tuesday. Yeah. It's hard to get down there and get parked and all that. But I mean, then we absolutely showed out. The place looked rocking and saw a ton of pictures. It seemed like the players did really well to greet with all the kids and families and stuff afterwards. So that's awesome to see. Speaking of City Park again, got another big announcement this week. The Gold Cup is coming to City Park. It'll be mid-June to mid-July. And also the biggest thing to note, the soccer capital of America did not get it in Kansas City. So that will be coming to St. Louis. And then I saw someone tweet, Jake, we have some away games that would be during the quarterfinals. Like City 2 and City are away when the Gold Cup quarterfinals would possibly be occurring. I thought we'd for sure just probably get like a group stage game, knowing that like LA and New York and
Yeah.
Dallas are in part of that, but maybe.
That's tough. Yeah, I know the way the Gold Cup is, it kind of just sweeps across the nation. Like you have a match day in your stadium and it moves on. It's not like you get a couple sporadic different games. So I'm sure they'll figure out the whole scheduling side of that. It also comes right up against Leagues Cup, which is in July. So there's going to be a lot of different matches, types of matches to look forward to as a soccer fan coming up in the summer. So I'm stoked for that. Hey, last note, Justin, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but City released this kind of out of the blue. No promotion, no nothing, but the City Rising is a YouTube series that is under the club banner now. It's phenomenal. There's 3 episodes, 10 to 15 minutes long. Great job to the team putting that together. It's really just like the history and the background as to how we got started as a club and how we're set up in terms of the academy and in terms of the community, all feeding into the first team. It's incredible, probably 40-ish total minutes of watching. And I really highly suggest anyone go check that out for just more context. We talked about a lot of it here, but it kind of puts it all into one nice visual format. So check out City Rising on YouTube.
I haven't seen it yet, but that sounds like one episode of like an hour-long show with commercials. So I might check that out tonight. Let's get into it. The team that we will be playing, FC Cincinnati. Let's talk about matchups, trends, storylines, a little preview there. Let's give them a little background, Jake, that they were an expansion team as well in 2019, but really they just kind of grew up out of the USL into the MLS. It wasn't like a brand new thing for them. They made it to the quarterfinals in their first ever playoff appearance last year after they had finished last in the Eastern Conference every year before that. Last year, they had 12 wins, 9 losses, 13 draws, lost to the runner-ups, Philadelphia Union in the quarterfinals. Kind of impressive, 64 goals for, 56 against. They're pretty much even on road and road versus home games. And I think we've talked about that with some of the teams that we've played. Like some of these teams have not been good on the road. It's nice to see a nice even balance from them, but it was really a breakout season from them last year that they're really looking to build on.
Yeah. And we're gonna get into this year too, but last year they had that high octane offense led by Brendan Vasquez and Brenner and Lucho. Basically they just had this dominant offense, and they've been a little bit stifled this year in terms of output, but once that clicks, their defense is also humming this season. So a good team and one I expect to see around. So far this year, they've got 7 wins and 2 draws. So undefeated, and they're first in the Eastern Conference, deservedly so, and top of the Supporter Shield rankings. LAFC does have a game in hand, so there's a little bit of a catch to that, but still an incredible start to the season for them. Away, they've got 1 win against Nashville, 2 draws against Orlando and Chicago. That Chicago game was nuts. Home, they've got 4 W's: Houston, Seattle, Miami, and Philadelphia. That Seattle one probably sticking out to you the most. But in terms of goals, it's interesting because it's been really tight games. They've played, 9? No, sorry, not 9 games. I don't know what I'm saying. 7-0-2. They're 5-0-2 so far to start the season. So they've got 9 goals for and 4 goals against. So it's not like, spitting goals everywhere you look, but they're also really stingy. They're not giving up too many goals. A couple big games.
A third of that came through in the Chicago draw, and they were 3-3. So 3 of their goals 3 of their 9, they literally came through in the Chicago game, but then also 3 of the 4 they gave up came in one game as well.
Right. They have, and just some marquee kind of games to talk to. Orlando, they definitely deserve to beat Orlando. They held them to 0.29 XG, which is remarkably low. Seattle, we know, was a close game. They dominated the first half, but kind of let Seattle creep back in the second half, but ended up scoring against the run of play in the second to get that final goal that was enough to beat Seattle, which we know is a good team. Chicago was a cluster of a game, but a fun one if you go want to check out those highlights. 3-3. Cincinnati battled back to get 2 goals in the 80th and 90th minute to actually salvage that tie. And they just knocked off Nashville, who's also a good team this year. So good team. They've played some teams that are currently in playoff contention. So pretty decent strength of schedule so far. But a couple of guys stick out to me, Justin, in terms of, who we should be on the lookout for. So you want to get us started?
Yeah. Brandon Vasquez, 24-year-old American with a market value of $7.4 million, give or take. He has 1 goal and one assist so far this year, which seems low, but like we said, they only have 9 total. So he's been a producer for them. He's not afraid to shoot. He's second on the team with 17 shots, 3 on goal. A little bit of a slow start for him. One thing I did notice, Jake, all 9 of their goals have came from inside the 18-yard box.
Yep.
It's something to note. And it's something you see on MLS stats, but that's going to be something that we're going to have to look into as we get into the lineups and making sure that we have those guys marked up. But What is this? 23 goals in 44 games since the second half of 2021.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where, I mean, this is kind of like you need to bid on yourself, is what they say in some of these. And like, he needs to play well this year and have a breakout year if he wants to expand further and possibly go overseas.
Yep. Agreed. He's one of their main guys, and he partners up with Brenner, who I'm sure we'll talk about soon. But center back, they brought in some depth at center back here, and they got a loan for a 21-year-old from Wolverhampton Wanderers in the Premier League. He hasn't seen much time with them, but he's got 1 goal so far. He's a dynamic ball-playing center back who leads the team in tackles, second in blocks, second interceptions, kind of just a baller of a center back, and they play with 3 of them. And one of them is also Matt Miazga. So some pretty high intelligence center backs in the back. But Justin, one big key piece for them in Lucho Acosta is missing for this game. He has a shoulder injury. Usually he's the guy that we probably would have mentioned first because this man is scary as hell.
Yeah, you've been able to watch a lot of his highlights, and I've seen a couple of it. But we were on the podcast earlier for Cincy that we'll share tomorrow. But it's kind of scary for them. I think it's one of those things where they know what he's been like when he hasn't been 100%, but with him completely out, and it's a road game for them coming to City Park, it's not looking too good.
Yeah. Lucho is their creator, for everyone that's wondering. He's their number 10. He sits right behind their 2 forwards and supplies them. He has every bit of pass in his locker. So many different ways he can see a pass and has that vision to connect it. I encourage you all to check out some of his highlights. He's a pretty exciting player, but will not feature against us on Saturday. So thankful for that. Lastly, Junior Moreno is a guy that kind of coming out of the woodwork for them that has had a really great start to his season. He's Venezuelan, 29 years old, 2 goals, 1 assist so far, and does a lot of their progressive passing. Probably will be asked to do a little bit more now with Lucho Acosta out. Otherwise, honorable mentions. Roman Celentano is their goalkeeper. He's a 22-year-old goalkeeper, American nationality. He's actually just got called in for the U.S.-Mexico camp coming up here. And they also have Matt Miazga on the team, who is, we know, a tenacious American defender, and Brenner, who strike partners with Brandon Vasquez. So a lot of big name guys, especially in the MLS, that could give us some problems.
Yep, agreed. And then now let's talk about those guys on the field and their style underneath of their coach, who we know just slightly. Pat Noonan, he was a DeSmet grad from high school in St. Louis, Missouri. Grew up in Baldwin. He had 9 seasons in MLS. He was an assistant coach for LA Galaxy, U.S. men's national team in Philadelphia before coming to Cincy in 2022. Usually works with 3 center backs for a 3-4-1-2, a 3-5-2, or a 5-3-2. So kind of similar to what, I mean, if you guys want to think about the style that we just played this last game, they're looking to do like what we did with the Hebert, the Bartlett, and the Parker. So be on the lookout for that, and it'll probably change the style that we're going to go matching up with them.
Yeah, it could, and so could Lucho being absent for them. It could change how they want to approach this game. But basically, when you think about it, what you're going to see on the field, Brenner and Vasquez are going to work as a tandem duo up top. They play a lot off each other, and Acosta usually sits behind them. So whether or not they go for someone else to fill that role or switch up systems is yet to be seen. They do a little bit of their own pressing, and they look to hit teams hard on the break. They use their fullbacks, kind of like Seattle did a little bit, to create more width and generate chances. But when this team hurts you, it's going to happen very quick. They spring balls on. They've got some dynamic forwards in Vasquez and Brenner. So be on the lookout. If I'm Tim Parker, if I'm Kyle Hebert, or anyone in the back line, these guys are dangerous, and they're going to hit you quick. So you got to be on the lookout constantly at all times.
Which brings us right into it on some of the trends and storylines. I think we have to be ready for this because this is another meeting, again, back-to-back games of 2 of the top dogs in the MLS, not only just the Western Conference. I mean, with this, it's going to be one that we've talked about it. We got to get some points out of this, but this is not going to be an easy one. They're unbeaten right now on a 3-game win streak. They've won their last 3 games 1-0. So very low scoring, very good defense. They're one of 2 unbeaten teams in the MLS with them and LAFC. They are a little weaker away from home so far with a 33% win rate with those ties that they have on the road. But they score more and they concede more. So it kind of feels like they might have a little bit more open style of play on the road.
Could be. Yeah. They just play really tight games right now. I think their offense is struggling a little bit. So I'll get to that. But 5, you said last 3 are all 1-goal games in terms of wins. They have 5 1-goal wins this season. So, I mean, all of their wins have been 1 goal. So they're going to play a close game. They're not going to make it easy. So offensively, like we said, this team's pretty dynamic. I would say so. Their XG is 1.41 per 90 so far this season, which puts them about 9th in the MLS, which is probably a little bit lower than some would think. They're actually scoring even 1.29 goals per game, so underperforming their XG a little bit. And I'm looking at some of these highlights, and I'm thinking to myself, some of these chances that Vasquez and Brenner have, you're just like, oh my God, if that was my team, I'd be so mad they're not scoring some of these. And so I think a little bit of frustration building up in terms of clinical and how they're finishing some of their chances. I hope that doesn't click for them against us, but we could maybe benefit from some of that. They've been a little bit wasteful with some chances, but otherwise they create enough. The chances are there. That's not what they're struggling at.
I mean, and it builds on their defense. Their expected goals against is 0.57 per 90 minutes, which puts them 4th in the MLS, which is pretty impressive. And I mean, that makes sense because they've only conceded 4 goals so far, and 3 of those came in 1 game. So in their 7 games, they've had a shutout the other 5 times. So if that's math. So they have the best defense in the Eastern Conference. I would say one thing that we can look at for them is, and you probably looked at this from a lot of their game tapes and their highlights, is on corners and dead balls. That's where we can look to be a little bit more aggressive, especially bringing Parker forward and looking at Klaus. And then all of their goals, which, I mean, obviously all 4, were conceded in the 31st to the 50th. So kind of closing out in the first half and then trying to get right back into it to start the second half.
Yeah, I'm with you. So not a team that's invincible by any means, but a team that's tough to break down. So we'll see what we can bring. So let's talk about us a little bit, Justin. So City, I mean, coming off the back of 2 losses in this type of 2-game skid, and the way we've been shut out like that, definitely a lot of adversity still floating around. If you saw a lot of news about, getting away from principles or kind of losing our way. I think for me, the key to this game for us is get back to what worked. Get back to your basics, get back to pressing, go back to a formation that you've been practicing so much, like a 4-2-3-1. We still have the personnel to do that, even with Blum out. So I hope that Carnell and Coach Hack and the team kind of get back to what is most familiar, and that was working for us earlier on in the season. So I think a little bit of familiarity wouldn't hurt. And in terms of us coming back home, man, coming back home is huge. City Park is an advantage for us. The crowd shows up. We concede less goals at home so far, and the fans provide an atmosphere we've talked to John Nelson about. Like, it's hard to beat. So for them to have that home field advantage, they're going to need every bit of advantage on their side to play Cincinnati and to compete against Cincinnati and to hopefully get a result. So those are kind of some of the things that I think about right away.
Yeah, and I would say I think it's going to be absolutely electric. I feel like I say that every week, but the weather in St. Louis is going to be phenomenal. The guys are going to be buzzing. We need to get behind them after going down these past 2 games and kind of get back on track to where we need to be and get some of these results going. And talking about how we can get into that, our expected goals is 1.4 90 minutes, gives us about 10th in the MLS, averaging 2 goals per game, but it's tied for 2nd in the MLS. But obviously we've been shut out for the past 2 games. So something's been a little bit off with the fellas. I think we're going to pick it up being at home for a full week this week and looking into Saturday. We score about 1/3 of our goals from the 41st to the 50th minute and about 50% from the 61st to the 80th. And one of those overlaps that when you look at those stats, Jake, is 1/3 of our goals come the 41st to the 50th. They've given up all of their goals from the 31st to the 50th. So be on the lookout right at the edge of the half. Let's see if we can close something out and get us onto the right foot to start the second half.
Agreed. And defensively, over 60% of the goals that we've conceded so far have come after the 61st minute. So when we're conceding late a lot of the time. In terms of expected goals against, we're about bang average in the MLS. I think about 12th. We only average about 1.14 against us. So doing okay defensively. I think we'd like to see a little bit more of an effort to get a clean sheet in this game, which I think is possible. We're still tops in the MLS in terms of our pressing stat, like a passes per defensive action. So we're still pressing. We still have an element of our game going. Let's just make sure that we shine that through in this game. I think Carnell's going to have his hands full with some formation, conversation around what's the best. Should we do back 4, back 5? What should our midfield look like with Blum out? Also we have some injuries with Alm as well, like maybe Aziel Jackson or Akil Watts might see some more time. So a lot to consider if you're Bradley Carnell heading into this game.
Completely agree. Let's get into what players they should be considering, Jake.
Let's talk about it. And before we do so, 2 quick things for you all. So we are on YouTube right now, streaming live. For anyone joining us, thank you for joining us live. It's always a pleasure to have you. And for those listening to the podcast, thanks for listening. Feel free to throw us a like or a subscribe or hit notifications on YouTube so you know when your ball watching boys are going live. That is the best way to know. And follow us on Twitter or Instagram at ballwatchingstl. We put out some pretty fun stuff.
I'll give another plug, Jake, while you're plugging for that and pulling up the starting 11. It's the pitch. Obviously, it's coming. The one thing, the big news that they noted this week is that they're opening up at 6:30 a.m. for Saturdays and Sundays, getting some EPL games in, get there early, get some breakfast. People have been worried about getting in, one out. You don't have that problem if you get in at 7 a.m. I'm planning to be there for 18 hours on Saturday from 6:30 a.m. to 12:30 a.m. the next day when they close. So I would say get there, try the food, try the Irish coffee. Be very nice to your servers. The servers have been killing it. They've been overloaded these past couple weekends, but it's still doing an incredible job. So get out to the pitch.
Get to the pitch and on the pitch for City. Here's who we expect to see. For those that aren't visual right now, let's lay it out. Berkey in the net. Think it's going to be a big game for him. If Cincinnati can kind of wake up and not waste as many of their chances they've been creating for themselves, I think it's going to be a big game we're going to need from him. I think back five switches back to a back four for me. I think we go back to Johnny Nelson, Kyle Hebert, Tim Parker, Jake Nerwinski starting in the back four for me. Justin, any complaints?
No complaints. I just think we need to see a bigger game out of those guys. And then I think they were just a little thrown off having 5 back there last game, but need to get back to our ways and would love to see a shout out here. Moving into the midfield, we would love to have Edu next to Blum, but with Blum being out, we think that Indy Vasiliev will be there. And I wouldn't be surprised if we go to a 4-2-3-1, in my opinion. So having Edu and Indy sit in the back four is where I'd kind of put them. What are your thoughts?
Agreed. I think it's familiar. It's guys that have played a lot of minutes already so far, so I like that. To the 3, I think we bring back Jared Stroud, bring back Tomas Ostrak, put Tomas on the right wing, Jared on the left, or vice versa. We've seen them switch before. I think that's the winger, and that's the flank sort of depth that we need to create chances from wide spaces as well. Otherwise, I think we return back to Gioacchini. I think we saw a little bit of a suppressed game from him in the last game, and we've seen kind of that trend coming the last couple. So I'm hoping he can reignite his form and find it with Klaus and supply him and put in a hard shift on Cincy.
Yeah, I completely agree. I like when they do a little bit of a staggering. I know we got a couple comments in here with Ethan and Danny talking about, should we have Celio? Should we have Akil? Is Gio on the hot seat? I would say no, not right now. I'm not scared to. I hope Carnell's not scared to at least rotate some guys in with Alm and looking at a couple of these guys, Isak Jensen. Let's get some numbers with these guys and maybe later in the game. But I don't know how you don't stick with Nico. It's one of those things where if you have a bad game, you got to forget about it. We were so high on him and Klaus up top, talking about how they went to third grade together in 1908. We need to get back into that. And that's what I'd say. Let's get them back home and let's let these boys get feeling good again.
I like that. I like that commentary, Justin. So let's move into predictions. So now we know who's taking the field for us if we're Coach Carnell. I've got us coming out of here with a 1-1 draw, and it's going to be a nerve-wracking affair. I think it's be super low scoring. I could even see less goals than that. I just need us to get back on the board, man. We need to put a goal back in the back of the net, get that confidence restored, especially for Klaus. It means the world to keep his mom from crying. So it's going to keep me from crying as well if we can get on the board here. So I'm thinking we can get on. I do think Cincy will be tough to keep off. So I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw.
I'm going to keep it low as well. I'm just going to go with a 1-0 dub. I do think that we need to get back on the board. I would like to see a Klaus goal or maybe a Nico goal to get people just kind of feeling good about him again. And I would love to see another clean sheet. It doesn't seem like this team's creating a lot of chances. Or creating a lot of goals. They're creating chances, but all 9 of their goals in their 7 games have come inside of the box. I think we can shut them out, and let's do it at home.
Let's do it. Justin, if you were a betting man, if betting was legal here, but if you wanted to be a betting man and went across the border to Illinois, what would your Grahammer be for this week?
So before we get into the actual Grahammer, the money line is City plus 135, Cincy plus 180, and the tie of plus 230. So we are favored, even though we've lost the last 2 games. I think that's taken into a little bit of account of their injuries and then also us playing at home. The over 2.5 is minus 135. And the under 2.5 is plus 105. I don't like betting unders, Jake, but this game's got unders written all over it. We've been having trouble scoring. They've been having trouble scoring, and they've been doing a good job of keeping people out. I know we haven't the past 2 games, but we had 2 shutouts the 2 games before that. So I kind of like just wish I would have looked at this more. The under 205 or under 2.5 at plus money is very interesting to me. But I think what I actually got to lock in for is another parlay, which has not been good for me, but I keep going back to it because they're fun. The under 3.5 goals and the under 11.5 corners total for the game is minus 110. Since he has taken the least amount of corners in the MLS, 19 through 7 games so far, that's just under 3 a game. Yes, we usually get a decent amount of corners, but I think they're going to try to shut us down with their defense. They don't give up as many corners. So that's what I'm looking at right there, Jake, is the under 3.5 goals and the under 11.5 corners. Very random, but I like it.
Yeah, I've also got a parlay for this week. I've got City's team total in goals over a half. So just to score a goal plus the game total goals of under 3.5. If you put those two together, get you to about minus 110, which is great value. I think this is going to be a low scoring game, but I trust that we're going to get in the board here. I trust we're going to get a goal. And I think Klaus could be the man to do it. So that is what I'm locking in for my Grahammer.
One quick note on that, Jake. Both teams to score no is plus 135. If people are looking at that, if you think we can get a shutout here, a team that's scored 3 goals in the last 3 games total, let's do it.
Could be worth it. Justin, let's quickly try to cover some listener questions. I know we missed some in the comments, but we got one from Joseph. Joseph, thanks for tuning in. How can the coaching staff help City get some scoring chances after 2 quiet matches? I think, Joseph, I've already talked about it a little bit, but I want them to get back to what was working. And I think what was working is playing within yourself and playing to your principles and playing to our strengths, which is positional awareness, knowing your marks, when to go press, when to counter press right away, creating overloads and making the opposition feel very uncomfortable on the ball and disrupting whatever they have. So that's how we create chances, is create uncomfortable situations for the opposition and spring right on top of them. So that's how I think we can do it.
Completely agree. You mentioned spring. I had a couple questions about the weather. Is the rain going to hold off? Yes, it will. I think weatherman checking in. Yep. It should be done by noon is what I'm seeing. So shouldn't have to worry about a 7:30 game. One of the more interesting ones, Jake, I want to hear what your thoughts are. What are the keys to success this weekend? What is, like, if you had to say we need to do this to beat this team, what is it?
I think we have to defend very compactly, and probably a lot of it's going to come to our fullbacks creating issues for their forwards. They like to spring down the flanks and do through balls, long balls over the top. We need to be able to defend and defend soundly. Don't jump in, stay tight, and don't let them have much space. They can make a lot of work with minimal space. And then the last thing I'll say, Justin, is chance creation. We just need to show some form of life in this space, man. It's been 2 games without much of that, and I want us to at least have chances created. And if we lose because we didn't finish, that's one thing. If we lose because we just didn't generate anything, that's another thing. So I don't want us to not create chances this week. I want that to change this week.
I'm going to piggyback off that and say, for us to create life is we can't concede first. I think the fans are already, you can kind of see it like, oh, we've lost the last 2 games. We haven't scored. If they put one away on us, it's going to deflate that place. And we can't have that happen. If we score, those boys are going to be humming and we're going to come up and we could blow them out of the water. So that's my one kind of opinion.
I like that. Confidence is infectious, man. If we can get on the board, who knows? I mean, we could just run away. And we could also, if we concede first, we could just shell up. So I'm hoping that it's not us conceding first. I do agree. I would love to be the first one to score on this game. I think it'll be huge for us against a team that really makes it hard to score. So, you know what? Anything's possible this week. I'm optimistic. And the last thing I'll say for everyone listening, we have a quick announcement, a lot more details to follow, but save the date on April 22nd. Yeah, that's right. In just 2 Saturdays from now, we are doing a recording of our show at Sports and Social at Ballpark Village. They were kind enough to invite us out, and we're going to have some perks for you all if you're able to come join us. But we'll be doing a pregame show prior to an away game there. So looking forward to that. Stay tuned for a lot more details coming, but catch us at Sports and Social on April 22nd. Mark your calendars.
It's going to be awesome. Battlehawks play at home at 11 a.m. that morning. Go to the game, then just walk over to Ballpark Village. We'll be there 4 to 8. We'll have a lot more details on it, but yeah, it's going to be electric.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Go City, man. It's going to be a big Saturday. I'm so excited to see if we can turn this thing around. I have confidence that we can. So I'm optimistic. Let's roll and let's finish this week and let's go out with the banger on Saturday night. I'm feeling it.
All for City.
All for City.